Hey, Natasha Neese here, author of Rise Up and Rock, A Front Woman's Journey. And today we're going to read chapter 11, A Rock and Roll Odyssey Gone Wrong. I felt really good about the morale within the band. Lightheartedness and easy cooperation were deeply appreciated. Nourishment for the soul. It was a stark contrast to the negative energy of the past that had slowly normalized blame, defensiveness, and emotional volatility. I realized that loyalty to dysfunction was a betrayal of my own personal and professional growth. I knew that peace was the source of my clarity, my creativity, and my strength. It wasn't just self care, it was spiritual strategy. I knew my nervous system was not built to live in survival mode, constantly reacting to drama. I was proud to have chosen what appeared to be the harder path and to be met with relief and reward. I had protected my vision, my bandmates, and myself from negative energy that would have continued eroding everything I was working to build. Our next show was May 31st at Roxy-Ann, the venue that had always felt like home. Every time we played there, we packed the place, and this night was no exception. Randy surprised us by bringing some cool fog machines, one for either side, that forcibly blew smoke straight up into the air that was colored by lights. I found myself reveling in the musical chemistry between Mike and Michael, both of them stars in their own right. We always ended with Kashmir because Mel, the manager, loved it. She'd drop whatever she was doing when she heard us start it, go straight to the front, dancing, singing along. By the end of the night, we had raked in over $600 in tips, a number that stunned every member of the band, even Randy, who had seen everything. The next show on the books was the Golden Nugget Casino in Pocatello, Idaho. A big question mark. John, the promoter, had been one of our biggest champions, absolutely thrilled by what we were doing. He had promised us that this gig would be well worth the drive, estimating we'd make around $3,500. That was a solid payday. But before the date arrived, tragedy struck. John passed away unexpectedly. Though I had never met him in person, I was saddened because he was a family man and certainly an enthusiastic fan of Living Loving Lead. This curveball left the gig in limbo. I called together a serious band meeting on the porch of Mike's house where we had our weekly rehearsals to decide if we should take the risk to do the show. It was a long drive, an unknown venue, and an entirely new market for us. We had never played anywhere near there before, and without John to promote us, we had no idea what we were walking into. I was unattached to the decision. On one hand, I had gotten excited about a road trip with the guys. It was a chance to bond and take our show somewhere new. It would be an adventure. But on the other hand, I didn't want to be responsible if it ended up a bust. We were all open-minded but hesitant, and in the end, we turned to Randy. He was like our big brother figure, our road dog, the one with the most experience. If anyone could make the call, it was him. He took a deep breath, thought for a moment, and then said, "Let's do it." So several days later, we set off for Pocatello. We had high hopes in the beginning, the very beginning, in fact, because Randy's van started hiccuping and stalling before we even got it out of the neighborhood. Instead of heeding to this mechanical warning as a sign from the universe, or simply irresponsible to continue, we pushed on, stubbornly determined to reach our destination. But by the time we were a few hours down the highway, it became a recurring ritual to pull over and let the engine rest before limping forward again. What should have been an 8-hour drive stretched into a grueling 13-hour ordeal. We finally arrived at the hotel well past midnight, exhausted and irritable. The hotel, attached to the so-called casino, was a nightmare. The front desk clerk seemed clueless about our reservation, and the lobby bathroom was clogged and reeking. The casino itself was far from the glitz and glamour its name suggested. Instead of rows of slot machines and bustling activity, there were just a few outdated video game style gambling machines located outside the venue's locked door. The hotel rooms were worse. Clothes were strewn in corners. Fluids of some sort stained the walls. The carpets were filthy. The air was heavy with neglect. Vince swore he saw someone standing behind him in the mirror, only to find no one there when he turned around. The guys had to change rooms multiple times to find accommodations that were merely tolerable. My room, while not even close to pristine, was okay, and I was desperate to get some sleep to preserve my voice for the following night. The next morning brought its own set of challenges. The venue door remained locked, and the van was completely broken down on the far side of the parking lot. We hauled our gear into the lobby and waited hours for the venue door to be opened, only to be faced with yet another hurdle. The large stage was completely covered in someone else's equipment. I went to the desk clerk, who was able to contact the previous band. But they warned us not to touch their equipment and said that they would get there as soon as possible. Hours passed with no resolution. When their representative finally arrived to remove the equipment, we managed a hasty setup and sound check, knowing full well we had no clear plan on how we were going to get home. The bartender's son claimed he could fix the van and tinkered beneath it during our performance. Amidst the chaos, my close friend Ilea joined us from Boise to visit me and to see the band. She was a sophisticated and spiritual older woman, but also very down to earth. She rolled with the situation, an absolute pillar of strength for me as the experience unfolded. Michael, and I also managed to fit in an interview through my computer with DJ Shaggy from a big Boise radio station while rolling a Facebook Live on my phone. Vince showed up after the interview was finished, which was just as well. Before the show, I asked the bartender if we could use the stage lights and if she'd be willing to turn off the televisions mounted directly across from the stage. She told me she'd have to check with the owner. Nothing changed. I had to follow up with her several times before anything happened. Eventually, an angry man emerged from the back. No greeting, no acknowledgement, just a curt flick of the light switches before heading for the exit. I approached him to thank him, hoping to soften the exchange, but he snapped a few clipped words at me and kept walking. I don't even remember what he said, just the feeling that we were an unwelcome inconvenience. A few minutes later, I asked the bartender again if the TVs would be turned off before we started. She shrugged, saying she had forgotten to ask the owner and he was gone now. I gently but firmly impressed upon her how important it was for us and for the show. Playing with a bank of glowing screens directly across from the stage was distracting for any band, but for me, it was particularly difficult. I hadn't had a television since I left home at 16 and hadn't watched a full TV program in my adult life. So I was deeply sensitive to the hypnotic editing techniques. The flickering images pulled at my attention like a magnet to iron filings, as I suspect they're designed to do. But when she told me she was actually afraid of the owner, I dropped it. The TVs were running different shows simultaneously, and one of them was about Poltergeist. It was oddly captivating to me, and I couldn't help dwell on the story Vince had told me about the vision in the mirror. Besides, we had since learned that the so-called hotel was actually a condemned nursing home. The place felt haunted already, and the programming didn't help. When showtime came, no one was there. We Woo! We considered waiting, but decided to go ahead and just get it over with. And of course, we played well. Vince did get lost in a few songs. He admitted afterward he was watching the ghost show. But overall, we locked in and I gave it my all. A few people came through the doors and were wonderfully enthusiastic. There were 7 people total. A group of 5 warm-hearted Hispanic folks at one table and 2 white men who were both clearly Led Zeppelin fans on the floor in front of us, father and son. We sold a few t-shirts, signed some autographs, and received sweet compliments that made the night feel worthwhile, at least for the moment. The post-show dealings were another story. The bartender refused to pay us until we gave her son $600 cash for the repairs on the van. Randy said he started the engine and it sounded better at least, so Mike and Vince drove to an ATM to withdraw the amount. She then gave me the check, and I'm surprised it didn't bounce. I forgot the amount because it paled in comparison to the thousands Randy and I lost in the debacle. After the show, sitting in the courtyard with the guys as they smoked cigars, we managed to laugh about the calamity. Randy regaled us with tales of past disasters he had experienced in his decade-long music career, helping to lighten the mood. Despite everything, morale remained surprisingly high. It felt like we all knew the benefit of making the best of it and seeing the whole thing as a bonding experience. After all, that's part of what I'd hoped for, and taking a road trip with the guys. But the next morning brought more hurdles. The previous band, a mariachi band, evidently, needed to load their equipment back onto the stage, which meant we had to move our gear out into the lobby since Randy's van was sputtering again. We couldn't commit to loading the equipment into the trailer, not knowing if we had anything to tow it. Eventually, Mike located a U-Haul in a distant town that was capable of towing our trailer full of equipment. While he and Vince drove hours to retrieve it, a tow truck arrived to haul Randy's van to Boise for repairs. Randy and Ilea sat in the front seat, both similar ages and very outgoing. They were good company for each other. After Ilea left for a UFO conference the next morning, Randy stayed at Ilea's apartment waiting for his van for 4 days, with limited food and no transportation. I rode back with Mike in the U-Haul, and Michael and Vince drove home in Vince's car. That show wasn't just a mess. It was an initiation. On social media, I shared the resilience and camaraderie, which was very real for me. But there was a moment that hurt my spirit. At one point, as I walked down the hotel's dingy hallway, I overheard Mike and Michael talking loudly in their room. Mike was mocking my optimism about earning $3,500 in a silly girl voice. Michael's voice followed, "Dragging our asses all the way out here for this." Their words stopped me in my tracks. I hadn't even known where their room was, but clearly my fear of their resentment attracted this synchronicity. My heart sank, and tears welled up as I knocked on their door. When they opened it, standing side by side in all their glory, I asked, "Are you guys mad at me for this?" They both shook their heads emphatically and denied it, but the mocking tone I'd overheard lingered in the air between us. I nodded, trying to accept their assurances, but the hurt remained. I told myself that it was largely a venting between the two of them. But in a world of logistical nightmares, it was enduring the emotional strain that disturbed me far worse than money lost or haunted hotels.